There's a level of discipline that doesn't feel like a choice. It feels like gravity. It's the kind of consistency that others don't admire. They fear it. This isn't about being motivated. It's not about finding your passion. This is about becoming something irreversible. It's the silent hum of a machine that never stops. You watch this person, Raphael, and you see an action repeated so many times over so many years that the action becomes a law of physics. This isn't normal. Normal people have good days and bad days. Normal people negotiate with themselves. Normal people need to feel ready. The person operating at this level of strength is not normal. They are an unbreakable person with frightening consistency. They don't debate the action. They simply execute the identity. They are a wall others bounce off of. Today, we break down the ancient samurai concept that builds this human weapon. The secret Miyamoto Musashi used to eliminate the option of retreat. This is a system. This is a transformation. But be warned, this isn't for everyone. Raphael knew the script by heart. Monday morning, the alarm would go off. A sudden surge of clean energy. The new plan, the new routine, the new diet. This time, he was serious. He felt the initial burn of commitment. He hit the gym. He logged his work. The first few hours were a rush. He was on the path. By Wednesday, the friction started. A late meeting. A sudden craving. The clean lines of the plan started to blur. He felt the mental weight of all the things he was supposed to be doing. Friday arrived like a heavy blanket. The work was finished, but the discipline was gone. He ordered the food, watched the shows, and promised himself that the weekend was for recharge. Then came Monday again. The cycle renewed. A fresh start. But the enthusiasm was hollow now. It was built on the ruins of the last 6 attempts. The repetition was exhausting. He'd commit, crash, and then feel the sharp, specific pain of failure layered on top of all the previous failures. He wasn't quitting on a goal. He was quitting on the feeling of being the kind of person who achieves goals. He started to rely on motivational videos. He needed the external energy jolt. But the energy never lasted past the morning coffee. It was borrowed fuel. One night, sitting in the dark, he had a realization. He didn't lack willpower. He used immense willpower every week just to start again. The problem wasn't the effort. The problem was the gap. He was fighting something he didn't understand. The failure cycle Raphael was caught in has been studied for centuries. The solution isn't found in a self-help book. It's found in a psychological architecture built by masters of war and solitude. The samurai knew that motivation is a cheap chemical high. It's a feeling. Feelings change. You cannot build an unbreakable identity on the shifting sands of emotion. They used a principle called Guji, continuous practice without gaps. Guji is not about intensity, it is about continuity. Musashi, the sword saint, recognized that most people operate in a system of reversible commitments. They can quit at any time. They tell themselves, I'll try this for 30 days, and that 30-day limit is the exit ramp they plan on taking. The mind knows the escape route is there. The mind constantly negotiates. The secret of the system is to shift from a reversible commitment to an irreversible commitment. This is why ancient orders used ritual and public declaration. When a monk takes vows, it is not a note to himself. It is a witnessed public event. His identity is officially declared dead, and a new one is born. The commitment is not just to the routine, but to the person he has publicly become. Raphael needed to stop telling himself he was going to try to be consistent. He had to decide, without exception, that he is an unbreakable person. The difference is everything. A reversible commitment says, I will meditate for 10 minutes if I have time. An irreversible commitment says, I meditate. It is non-negotiable. I only debate the method, never the action. The only way to enforce this psychological law is through the eyes of others. The system requires 2 things, a fixed, minimal anchor habit and a public contract. You find one action, the smallest, most annoying action that represents your target identity. For Raphael, it was a single 15-minute weightlifting circuit, executed at 6 a.m. every day. Then, you declare it. Not on social media, but to the 1 or 2 people whose judgment you truly respect. You tell them, "I am now the kind of person who never misses this action. You may ask me about it at any time." They don't decide. They have already decided. They have installed a psychological firewall. They aren't trying to achieve a goal. They are simply enforcing an identity. The decision is made, the contract is signed, the identity is chosen. But the war is far from over. The human body is an economy of energy. It is governed by a prime directive, conserve for. Your chosen identity, the unbreakable person, is viewed by your ancient biology as a sudden, massive energy expenditure. And so, the negotiation begins. Raphael wakes up at 5:58 a.m., 2 minutes before the alarm. The mind is a lawyer, already building the case for retreat. You had a bad sleep. This one day won't matter. You can do 2 sessions tomorrow to make up for it. Rest is part of the process. This internal monologue is the biological self fighting the identity self. It presents friction as necessity. It uses logic to justify comfort. The key to Guji is to recognize the negotiation, but never engage with it. The moment you argue with the thought, you empower the thought. Raphael's solution was to use a fixed, non-negotiable time. The 6 a.m. slot was sacred. It was not a time for lifting. It was a time for becoming. He learned to associate the physical resistance, the heavy limbs, the mental fog, with the old identity dying. The pain wasn't a signal to stop. It was the sound of the friction being overcome. The friction is the energy tax you pay to enforce the new identity. If the friction wasn't there, a change wouldn't be meaningful. He would simply stand up, cold, and start the countdown. The body can endure anything for 15 minutes. The biological self would scream, but the identity self had already executed the mission before the mind was fully conscious. It was never a total victory. He never felt motivated every morning. But he achieved a partial victory. The non-negotiable action was done. The streak was protected. The identity was reinforced. He paid the tax, and the identity survived another day. The ultimate weakness of the motivated person is the constant search for the best method. The motivated person loves novelty. They devour new routines, new supplements, new gurus. They are obsessed with optimization. The unbreakable person knows this search for variety is a deadly distraction. Guji is enforced through simplification. If you have 5 options for breakfast, you have 5 points of decision fatigue. If you have 1 non-negotiable meal, you have 0 points of friction. Raphael made a dogmatic decision. He would do the same 15-minute circuit every single morning. The same 4 movements, the same 5 sets. He eliminated the question, what should I do today? He made the process intentionally annoying. Annoying is a feature, not a bug. If it was exciting, it would rely on motivation. Because it is boring and repetitive, it relies on identity. The moment he considered switching the routine, the thought was terminated. There is only one way. This rigidity invites criticism from the outside world. You're overtraining, a friend said. You should cycle your intensity. Why do you eat the same thing every day? That's unhealthy. Another worried. You're becoming robotic, Raphael, his partner commented. But these criticisms became signals of success. When others see your path as unnecessarily restrictive, it means you have built a system that relies on identity, not pleasure. The goal is to eliminate decision-making. Decision-making requires energy. The core ritual of the unbreakable person must be automatic, instinctual, and beyond debate. This fixed nature acts as a shield. When an unexpected crisis hits, the kind that derails a normal person's routine, Raphael doesn't have to think. The routine itself, the core identity anchor, is so fixed and simple that it requires minimal cognitive energy to maintain. Better way, there is only the one way that enforces the identity. The most insidious enemy of the unbreakable identity is the all-or-nothing trap. The belief that if you cannot achieve perfection, you must retreat to nothing. Guji, continuous practice without gaps, solves this by separating the concept of rest from the concept of retreat. Rest is a necessary part of the continuous flow. A river, though flowing constantly, has deep, still pools where the water gathers strength. A retreat is building a dam and stopping the flow entirely. The moment the river stops, it begins to stagnate. The samurai understood that the quality of practice will fluctuate. You will have days of high intensity and days where you can barely manage the minimum. But the rule is absolute: no 0 days. If Raphael was sick, injured, or facing a true emergency, he didn't skip the 6 a.m. block. He simply reduced the volume to the minimum viable practice. 1 rep, 5 minutes of stretching, 1 page of the book. The core identity action is a fire. You don't need to throw logs on it every day. Some days, you only need to blow gently to keep the ember alive. The moment the fire goes out, the effort required to restart it is immense. The power is in the streak. A streak of consistency is not a measure of output. It is a neurological reinforcement loop. Every day you hit the anchor habit. You don't just train the body, you train the prefrontal cortex to associate this time with this action. You are building a current. Once the current is strong enough, it carries you. Stopping requires more effort than continuing. Musashi said the warrior is like a sharp blade. The blade is not sharpened only when needed, it is honed continuously. Even during the rest, the maintenance continues. The moment it stops, it dies. The gap is the psychological and neurological death of the identity. The master architect of identity knows that willpower fails under pressure. The key to invincibility is not resisting the chaos, it is anticipating it. This is the principle of pre-solution, or what elite systems call the if-then planning mechanism. It removes the decision-making process from the moment of stress. When your willpower is low, when you are tired, distracted, or emotionally drained, you enter a state of decision fatigue. The executive function of the brain is exhausted. This is when the old identity, the one that seeks comfort, slips back in. The unbreakable person designs their environment and response before the pressure hits. There is no discussion. The answer already exists. For Raphael, this looked like a rulebook for inevitable chaos. When X happens, unforeseen travel. I do Y. I pack the single essential resistance band and find the nearest 5 square feet of floor space. The routine is shortened to 7 minutes, executed immediately upon waking. When X happens, sickness but not bedridden, I do Y. I switch the routine from high-resistance lifting to 5 minutes of focused stretching and breathing work. The time slot is preserved, the continuity is protected. When X happens, late night, less than 6 hours sleep, I do Y. I cut the routine time in half, 7.5 minutes, but execute it at 100% focus. The identity is enforced, but the body is preserved. This is the discipline of a monastery. Every detail is accounted for. The schedule is not a suggestion. It is the terrain of the life. When the monastery bell rings, you move to the next ritual. You don't ask why or if. You simply move. This pre-solution architecture saves the limited fuel of the conscious mind. It turns a negotiation moment into an execution moment. A normal person wakes up facing a decision tree. Do I work out? Do I go out? Do I stay in? This is energy depletion. Raphael wakes up facing a straight line. The plan is baked into the environment. His gym clothes are laid out. The water is ready. The playlist is cued. He is merely following the code that his strong self wrote for his weak self. The pre-solution is the ultimate act of self-control, controlling the self of tomorrow by the identity of today. The man who started the journey, Raphael, is gone. He died not in a sudden cataclysm, but in the accumulation of thousands of non-negotiable mornings. The gaps are closed. The streak is years long. The identity is complete. He is no longer doing the routine. He is being the man who does the routine. This distinction is the frightening level of strength. When a normal person misses their practice, they feel guilt. When the unbreakable person considers missing it, they feel a deep existential dread, the threat of returning to the chaotic self they fought to eliminate. The system has transformed the man, and the transformation has altered his environment. Others now perceive him differently. They see the anchor habit, the same 15-minute circuit, the same 4 movements, performed with silent, frightening consistency, and they do not see effort. They see inevitability. They will say, "You're so lucky to have that motivation," or "I wish I had your drive." Their discomfort is the final metric of your success. They project their weakness onto your strength, because they cannot comprehend a person who has eliminated the option of quitting. The unbreakable person doesn't need external rewards. The reward is the enforcement of the identity itself. Every single execution is a proof, a ritual of rebirth that confirms, "I am an unbreakable person with frightening consistency. This is not a temporary pursuit. This is a final state of being. Your task now is not to feel motivated. It is to choose which identity will die today, the inconsistent, chaotic self, or the unbreakable person. Declare your irreversible commitment. Build your system of Guji. Protect the gap above all else. He doesn't do it anymore. He is it.